Captain Jake Morrison stood at the helm of the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge, watching distant stars drift lazily past the main viewport. His crew had spent the last 6 months out here, charting unmarked systems and searching for signs of life within the Kepler 442 sector. The job was quiet, often uneventful, but Jake had come to appreciate the tranquility of deep space. The ship's quiet hum echoed around him as it glided through the cold void between stars. His team, 35 men and women, manned their stations with diligence, monitoring diagnostics and scanning instruments. They were capable, committed, all volunteers from Earth's outer colonies who'd signed on to explore what lay beyond the known frontier. Lisa Chen, the vessel's linguistics officer, glanced up from her console, her brow furrowed in confusion. Her jet-black hair was cropped short, and she wore the standard issue blue of the exploration corps. Lisa was among the most brilliant minds Jake had ever worked with, fluent in 12 human tongues and capable of deciphering alien symbols faster than most advanced software. "Captain, I've got something odd on the long-range comms array," she said, brushing a lock of hair back behind her ear. "It looks like an encrypted transmission, but the structure doesn't match anything in our archives." Jake strode toward her station, the metallic thud of his boots echoing off the deck. At 42, he'd spent 15 years in command and had learned to listen when his crew noticed anomalies. The bridge was sleek and utilitarian, ringed by displays showing starscapes and data feeds. "How odd are we talking?" he asked, leaning over to peer at her screen. The monitor displayed unfamiliar waveforms pulsing in elaborate, almost rhythmic sequences no known human tech could replicate. "Very odd, sir," Lisa responded, adjusting her earpiece. "The signal's about 12 light-years out, near a star system we've never visited. The encryption is incredibly advanced, but there's something about it. The base frequency almost feels desperate." Ryan Torres, the comms tech stationed beside her, swiveled in his seat. Barely 25 and fresh from Mars colony, Ryan was a signal processing prodigy. His hands danced over the controls as he tried to refine the incoming data. "Captain, I can amplify the signal and run it through our decrypt suites," he said, a note of anticipation in his voice. "But it'll take some time, hours maybe, to crack the cipher." Jake gave a short nod and returned to his command chair in the center of the bridge. Years of experience had taught him that deep space revealed its secrets only to the patient. "Proceed, but filter it through our security systems. I don't want any alien malware slipping into our network." Amanda Brooks, the ship's science chief, glanced up from her workstation in the rear. She was a tall, flame-haired woman whose life's work had revolved around studying alien artifacts and theorizing methods of non-human communication. Her console was a chaos of chemical graphs and mathematical modeling. "Captain," she said, voice calm but eyes lit with restrained excitement, "if I'm right, we may be looking at humanity's first alien contact. The structure of the signal suggests it could be a distress beacon." The bridge fell into silence, broken only by the ship's mechanical hum. Every crew member knew that discovering alien life was the dream, the holy grail, of every explorer, yet they also understood that such a moment would redefine everything about human existence. First contact was a subject drilled into them, studied endlessly, but none had truly expected it. Danny Hayes, head of ship security, rose from his station beside the weapons controls. A hulking man with graying hair and years in the colonial defense forces, Danny's instincts leaned toward caution. His role was to ensure crew safety, which made him wary of unknown signals. "Sir, we should be cautious before responding," he said, his deep voice resonating across the deck. "We don't know who or what we're dealing with." Karen Phillips, the executive officer, gave a firm nod of agreement. She had always been Jake's, second in command, and known for her methodical, pragmatic nature. Her responsibility was to anticipate what could go wrong and ensure the ship was ready for any outcome. "Danny's right, Captain," Karen said, glancing down at her datapad. "Protocol says we notify Earth Command immediately for any possible alien contact. We're not outfitted for a first contact scenario." Jake weighed their advice. They weren't wrong. Rules existed for a reason, but he also knew how easily a signal like this could vanish. Space didn't wait. If they delayed for orders from Earth 37 light-years away, this message might be lost forever. "Lisa, how long until we have a full decryption?" Jake asked. "Maybe 3 to 4 hours," she replied, not taking her eyes off the screen. "It's a very complex cipher, but I'm making headway." Jake gave a firm nod. "All right, keep decoding it, but Ryan, send a burst transmission to Earth Command. Everything we've got so far, they need to know." The next 4 hours dragged. Some crew members rotated for food and rest, but everyone kept checking Lisa's station whenever they passed. Jake remained on the bridge nursing coffee, eyes locked on the stars drifting outside. He had a sinking feeling this discovery was going to alter the course of his life, and not just his. At last, Lisa leaned back in her seat, pale but focused, excitement flickering in her expression, mixed with an edge of unease. "Captain," she said quietly, "I've cracked the encryption. It's definitely a distress call. You should hear this." Jake stood immediately and walked over. Amanda, Danny, Karen, and Ryan followed. The full bridge staff clustered around Lisa's console as she initiated playback. A voice emerged from the speakers, unlike anything human. It sang rather than spoke, smooth and flowing and yet unmistakably urgent. Fear pulsed through its musical tones. Though they didn't understand the words, the emotion was raw, undeniable. "Definitely alien," Amanda breathed, torn between scientific awe and creeping concern. "That vocal structure isn't even close to anything human." Lisa's fingers danced across the keyboard as she funneled the audio through translation algorithms. "I'm getting fragments," she murmured. "It's a cry for help. They call themselves the Republic. They're under attack by something called the Cathara Empire." The message kept playing, layers unfolding as the translator adapted. More words, more context began to emerge. The senders, beings known as the Vani, described themselves as a peaceful people, untouched by war for generations. They spoke of ancient agreements that had ensured galactic peace, but now something had shattered those accords. "They're saying their homeworlds are being destroyed," Lisa translated, her voice faltering with each new revelation. "Their people are being taken. They've scattered this message to countless systems, just hoping someone will listen." A cold shiver worked down Jake's spine. Across the stars, a civilization was being crushed, and this fragile signal had stumbled its way into human space. Into his hands. "Captain," Amanda said softly, "they don't even know Earth exists. The signal wasn't aimed at us. It's part of a broad, blind broadcast. A last-ditch plea." Jake looked around at his crew. Every one of them had volunteered to push the frontiers of human knowledge. Now they stood at a crossroad that would define more than just this mission. It could alter humanity's role in the galaxy. Danny stepped forward, his face grim. "Sir, if there's a hostile alien force out there wiping out peaceful species, we need to inform Earth immediately. This changes everything." Karen nodded firmly. "And if this Cathara Empire is expanding, Earth could be next. We have to consider that possibility." Jake returned to his command chair slowly, the weight of the moment pressing into his chest. Outside, the stars gleamed just as they always had, distant, silent, eternal. But Jake knew now that the universe had changed. Humanity was no longer isolated, no longer safe in its ignorance. Out there, beyond the stars, a desperate cry echoed. He thought of his crew, the people back home, the innocents calling out in song and fear across the void. The decision should have been simple. follow protocol, contact Earth Command, and await further instructions. But Jake Morrison hadn't earned his captain's rank by always choosing the simple path. "Ryan, draft a response transmission," he said at last, his voice clear and resolute. "Use the same frequency the distress call came on." "What should the message say, Captain?" Ryan asked. Jake glanced out into the black sea of stars, aware that whatever he said next would alter the course of their future. "Tell them, help is coming." Horizon's Edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel on the outskirts of the Serenitatis Prime system, and Captain Jake Morrison immediately felt the blow of arriving too late. The main view screen lit up with the image of a stunning blue-green planet. But orbiting it were massive alien vessels unlike anything in the human catalog. They were sleek and curved, like metallic insects drifting silently in formation. "My God," Amanda Brooks murmured from the science station. "Those ships are enormous, at least 3 times our size." Jake gripped his chair's armrests as he watched brilliant beams of energy rain down from the alien warships to the planet's surface. Even from orbit, the devastation was visible. Great. Blooms of fire and ash blossoming over continents, wiping entire cities from existence. "Captain, I'm reading 17 heavy warships in orbit," Ryan reported, voice taut with disbelief. "They're targeting major population zones. I'm also seeing smaller vessels heading between the surface and the motherships." Lisa Chen worked with urgent speed at her comms panel, trying to make contact with anyone still alive down below. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, but her hands trembled slightly. "I'm picking up fragmented signals," she said. "The Vani are attempting mass evacuations, but those smaller ships, they're intercepting the escape efforts." Danny Hayes stood at the weapons console, his expression hardened by years of service, but darkened by what he was seeing. "Sir," he said grimly, "those craft aren't firing on civilians. They're capturing them. These aren't extermination raids. They're abductions." Karen Phillips, calm but visibly shaken, brought up nav data on her tablet. As XO, it was her duty to consider safe exit strategies, but what she saw made logical planning nearly impossible. "Captain, we're outnumbered 17-1, she said quietly. "We have no intel on their tech or firepower. Engaging them would be suicide." Jake kept his eyes on the screen as more energy lances flared down, lighting up entire land masses in fire. Every blast represented the death of thousands. He'd given the Vani his word. That help was on the way. Now that promise had brought him here with a single exploratory vessel facing an alien invasion force. His instincts screamed for him to run, to return to Earth, to bring back reinforcements. But deep down he already knew, by the time help arrived, there would be nothing. "Left of the Vani. Tony, what's our weapon status?" Jake asked, turning toward the ship's armament officer. Tony Rodriguez looked up in surprise. A young recruit from Luna Colony, Tony had joined the Exploration Corps to chart unknown stars, not to join battles. "Sir, we're fitted with standard defense loadout, plasma cannons, guided missile arrays, and low energy shielding," Tony finished. "Nothing close to what those alien vessels are probably equipped with." "Our weapons, are they charged and operational?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. But Captain, target the closest enemy ship," Jake interrupted. "We're going." "In?" The bridge went dead quiet, the ship's engines now the only sound in the silence. Jake could feel the weight of every gaze fixed on him. They all knew this order might be sending them into a fight they couldn't possibly win. But there were moments when the right course of action meant rejecting reason and standing up regardless of the outcome. "All hands," Jake announced through the ship-wide comms. "This is the captain. We are about to engage hostile alien. Forces in defense of civilian lives. Man battle stations." Ashley Garcia, the pilot, swiveled to face him. Born on Earth's Australia colony, she'd been flying since she was 16. Her fingers were already working, mapping their trajectory. "Sir, if we come in fast and low, we might catch them by surprise." "Make it happen," Jake ordered. Horizons. Edge surged forward, engines howling as it drove toward the planet below. They took a steep vector from the planet's night side, using the curve of the world as cover to mask their approach. As they broke into the upper atmosphere, Ashley rolled the ship hard and angled toward the closest Cathara vessel. "Firing now!" Tony shouted. The entire ship jolted as plasma blasts and missile salvos launched from their hull. The alien cruiser hadn't seen them coming. Its attention had been locked on the devastation it was delivering below. The Cathara were not expecting resistance. Jake watched with grim satisfaction as their volleys tore across the ship's black surface, detonating sections of the hull. "Direct impact!" Tony called out. "Shields are offline. They're venting atmosphere." But there was no time to celebrate. The other Cathara ships were already responding, shifting to engage. Energy beams lanced through space, chasing after the tiny human vessel. Ashley slammed the controls into evasive mode, throwing the ship into brutal spins and barrel rolls. Gravity systems struggled to compensate. Everyone on the bridge held tight to their stations. "They're flanking us," Danny warned, eyes fixed on the tactical overlay. "Fast movers. Faster than they look." Ashley dove toward the upper atmosphere again, pushing the ship lower. The sudden descent gave them speed, and the Cathara ships hesitated. "Captain, I think their vessels are too massive to maneuver effectively in atmosphere," Ashley said quickly. "We might be able to use that." Jake nodded without hesitation. "Take us lower. Find us survivors. We're here to help." The Horizon's edge roared into the upper skies of Serenitatis Prime. And for the first time, Jake saw the world they once called home with his own eyes. It must have been stunning, soaring crystalline towers, sweeping gardens that stretched across valleys, and intricate carvings etched into entire mountain faces. Now it was in flames. "I'm picking up a dense cluster of life signs, 50 kilometers ahead," Lisa reported. "They're moving. Looks like toward an evacuation zone." "Set us down nearby," Jake ordered. "Landing party, prepare for immediate deployment." The Horizon's edge descended into a field near what remained of a great city. Through the viewports, they watched as tall, elegant figures ran through the ruins. They resembled humans, but leaner, more graceful, their skin pearlescent in the fading light, with wide, luminous eyes that reflected sorrow and centuries of knowledge. Danny led the security team down the ramp, while Lisa carried a portable translator rig. The Vani refugees looked up at their unexpected saviors, their faces torn between fear and hope. They had never seen beings quite like humans, shorter, stockier, moving with practiced urgency and the energy of a species shaped by war. One stepped forward, clearly a leader, clad in ornate robes. He addressed Lisa in their melodic tongue, the translator struggling to keep pace. "He says his name is High Scholar SciFi," Lisa relayed. "He's asking who we are and why we came to help." Jake stepped forward to respond, but Ryan's voice came sharply over the comms. "Captain, we've got 3 Cathara capture ships incoming. ETA, 2 minutes." Jake looked at the Vanny again. There were at least 200, many of them children. Their ship could hold maybe 50 more crammed in. It wasn't enough, but they had to try. "Get as many aboard as possible," Jake ordered. "Prioritize children and wounded." The Vani moved with startling efficiency, lifting their young and injured and hurrying them toward the human vessel. High Scholar SciFi remained close to Lisa, speaking rapidly, bewildered but grateful. "He wants to know how we even understood their language," Lisa translated. "He's stunned we deciphered the signal. He says their form of communication is almost never compatible with other species." A low rumble echoed across the sky. The first Cathara capture ship emerged, gliding like a predator over scorched ruins. It was smaller than the warships in orbit, but still dwarfed Horizon's edge. From its underside hung grotesque, tendril-like appendages designed to snatch and bind. "Time to go," Jake announced. Ashley had kept the engines hot. The instant The last refugee cleared the ramp. She launched the ship. Inside, the cargo bays and corridors overflowed with frightened Vani. Their glowing eyes stared at the strange technology around them, unsure what fate awaited them now. The Cathara ship moved in to intercept, deploying its capture tendrils. But Ashley had trained flying through asteroid belts and radiation storms. This was her domain. She banked hard, twisting between the appendages, then pulled into a steep vertical ascent. The ship roared upward, using Serenitatis Prime's gravity, well to sling them past the enemy. "The other Cathara ships are repositioning," Danny warned. "I count 15 inbound. They're closing in fast. High." Scholar Zeph High stepped onto the bridge, carefully weaving through corridors now crowded with his displaced people. He made his way to Lisa, urgency in his voice and gestures as he pointed to the tactical display, showing the approaching Cathara ships. "He says the Cathara have never faced resistance," Lisa translated. "No species has ever dared defy them. He's asking how we have the courage to attack, especially so badly outnumbered." Jake studied the alien leader, a being whose civilization had composed poetry and painted stars, while humans were still struggling with fire. How could he explain that Earth's entire history was forged in conflict, every step of progress won, through survival against overwhelming odds? How could he help this gentle scholar comprehend that for humanity, the only path sometimes is through the fire? "Tell him where we come from. You fight for what's right, no matter the odds," Jake said quietly. Lisa conveyed his words. Jake watched the change in Zeph High's wide eyes, a subtle shift, a flicker of understanding. A moment that would begin to alter how the galaxy viewed war, peace, and the strange, stubborn species called humanity. The horizon's edge soared toward the edge of the system. 2 weeks later, Admiral Patricia Webb arrived at the designated rendezvous with 3 of Earth's most advanced warships. The battleships Liberty's Wrath and New Frontier dwarfed the horizon's edge, their armored hulls bristling with weaponry built for full-scale engagements. Trailing them was the support cruiser Aurora, loaded with critical supplies and fresh personnel. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the primary briefing chamber aboard the Liberty's Wrath, flanked by his crew and the senior command of the fleet. At the room's center were High Scholar Zeph High and a dozen other Vellani refugees, their tall, willowy figures looking delicate beside the human officers. Admiral Webb, a sharp-eyed veteran in her 50s with steely poise and battle scars. From the colonial campaigns, listened intently as Dr. Stephen Clark, fleet xenobiologist, presented his report. "What we're looking at is unlike anything we've encountered," Dr. Clark began, pointing to holograms of Vellani cities, art, and societal structures. "Their species evolved on a planet with minimal environmental threats, no large predators, a steady climate, and plentiful natural resources. Their culture grew around shared learning, mutual respect and expression, not conquest or survival." High. Scholar Zeph High spoke in a flowing cadence, his voice like wind chimes echoing through still air. Lisa translated, "He says their people have not experienced war in over 50,000 years. The idea of hurting another sentient being is completely alien to them." Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos, Ground Forces commander and a veteran of brutal colonial ground campaigns, frowned in disbelief. "How does a civilization survive without ever learning to fight?" "They didn't have to," Dr. Clark replied. "Their world was a paradise by galactic standards. But there's more. According to their accounts, the galaxy is governed by something they call the Preservation Protocol." Zeph High motioned toward the surrounding star maps and spoke at length. Lisa kept pace with his words, her face tightening with concentration, then surprise. According to High Scholar Zeph High, her voice was calm, but there was steel behind it. That's why the Cathara didn't hesitate. They weren't afraid of a galaxy that forgot how to fight, and that's why we scare them. Admiral Webb nodded. And now we understand why they hit Horizon's edge so fast. They recognized us as a potential threat the moment we made contact. We don't fit into their system. We're the anomaly. Jake Morrison looked at the gathered officers and alien guests. They expected us to fold like the others, but Earth doesn't fold. Lisa's voice trembled slightly as she translated Jake's words. The Villani delegation exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable, until High Scholar Zephy stood. He bowed formally to Jake, then to the entire room. He says, Lisa began, voice steadying, that perhaps peace must sometimes be protected by those who remember how to fight. Silence followed. Then Admiral Webb turned to her officers. Begin final preparations. If the Cathera want to test humanity's place in the galaxy, then we'll give them an answer they won't forget. The meeting ended with quiet resolve. The humans dispersed to their ships, the Villani returning to their quarters, changed. High Scholar Zephy lingered a moment beside the holographic Earth. His hand hovered above it, never quite touching. Death world. Yet from it came not monsters, but protectors. For the first time in thousands of years, war had returned to the stars. But this time, it didn't come to conquer. It came to defend. And at its heart was a species born in fire, forged in chaos, and unafraid of the storm. Humanity was here. Because every warrior species either destroyed itself or never reached the stars, Admiral Webb said grimly. Until now, she turned to High Scholar Zephy. What happened when your people tried to fight the Cathara alone? The Villani leader responded through Lisa, his translator. Her voice was quiet, tinged with shame. He says they attempted to organize resistance on 17 worlds, but they failed. Their forces couldn't bring themselves to inflict real harm. Even when extinction loomed, they relied only on non-lethal defenses. Captain Morrison, silent until now, finally spoke. That's why our first strike hit so hard. The Cathara weren't prepared for someone who fought to kill. Dr. Clark nodded grimly. Exactly. Their military doctrine is built around fear and control, not true warfare. They dominate species that refuse to fight. But against a determined enemy, they're exposed. Their ships are enormous, but their weapons and tactics are optimized for show, not survival. Admiral Webb tapped her communicator. Get me Earth Command, priority channel. She turned back to the group. President Johnson needs to hear this. We're not just making first contact. We may be entering the most dangerous war in galactic history. Over the next few hours, human vessels took aboard more Villani refugees. Each ship brought tales of worlds overrun by the Cathara Empire, populations, enslaved or worse. Every story followed the same pattern. Peaceful races attempting diplomacy or pacifist resistance, only to be crushed without mercy. Engineer Bobby Martinez examined recovered Cathara systems and found disturbing trends. Admiral, he said, their tech is designed to terrify, not kill efficiently. These warships could be far deadlier if built for actual combat instead of spectacle. Meanwhile, Navigation Officer Chris Thompson collaborated with Villani star cartographers. Together, they charted the extent of Cathara territory. Ma'am, he reported, they've claimed over 40 star systems. Based on current expansion rates, they'll own this entire galactic sector within 50 years. But the most devastating discovery came late that night. Dr. Clark summoned Admiral Webb to his lab. His expression was pale, haunted. Admiral, he began, gesturing toward glowing holograms of ancient texts. I've been analyzing historical records from the previous 2 Death World species. Each one changed galactic history. He pointed to the first cluster of documents. The first Death World race caused the foundation of the Preservation Protocol. Peaceful civilizations united in fear. Webb leaned closer. And the second? Clark hesitated. The second was eventually defeated, but not before it taught dozens of races how to fight. The resulting wars lasted over 1,000 years. 60% of the galactic population was wiped out. Webb stared at the data in silence, weighing humanity's position. They could retreat, leave the galaxy to its fate, or they could stand and risk triggering another age of fire and death. The answer came with the next scout report. The Cathara Empire had formed an alliance with two more militant powers, the Zir Collective and the Draken Republic. Combined, they controlled over 2,000 warships, and they were moving toward human territory. Admiral Webb faced her senior staff, face unreadable. Looks like our hand has been forced. The Cathara see us as a threat. That means we're already at war, whether we wanted it or not. High Scholar Zephy listened silently, standing near the window that overlooked the stars. Translated his words and spoke softly to Lisa. His answer carried the sorrow of a species that had realized too late what it meant to face extinction. He says that for the first time in centuries, his people feel hope. Lisa translated, not because humans will rescue them, but because someone has finally proven the Cathara can be stopped. He says, even if humans lose, others will remember resistance is possible. Admiral Webb. The true war erupted when the Dominion Alliance launched a major offensive against the human colony of New Haven. General Kevin Mitchell stood on the bridge of his flagship as 200 hostile ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. The Cathara had brought their allies, the insectoid Zir, with hive-mind precision, and the fanatical Drahan, for whom combat was sacred ritual. All ships, battle formation? Mitchell ordered into his comm. His 37-vessel fleet looked pitiful, beside the enemy armada, but each human ship carried weapons and tactics the Dominion had never seen. The enemy's first wave advanced in textbook formation, expecting the humans to surrender or run, as most species had done for generations. Instead, they met something no galactic force was ready for. Humans forged in wars where only the ruthless lived. Captain Susan Martinez led the destroyer Relentless, hardened by growing up in the asteroid colonies where death was always close. Watching the enemy formation close in, she smiled grimly. All ships, execute dispersal pattern 7. Make them chase us through the rocks. Human ships scattered like startled birds, vanishing into the dense asteroid field to break the enemy's formation. Dominion behemoths tried navigating the maze, while nimble human ships zipped through cover, striking engines and weapons before vanishing. Major Andrew Foster led the first boarding action in galactic records when his team used stolen Cathara tech to punch through an enemy hull. Inside, the aliens had never met warriors who fought in brutal melee, using blades and bombs, treating death as the price of victory. These humans are deranged, the Zaktar Hive commander broadcast to his allies. They ram our vessels when out of ammo. They invade with crude weapons. They do not fear death. On Earth, Dr. Jennifer Walsh raced to reverse engineer captured Dominion systems. Unlike peaceful species, humans had no qualms about weaponizing enemy tech. She merged Cathara biotech with human science to create hybrid systems that shocked even her colleagues. We've weaponized their healing tech, she told Earth Command in a video briefing. Their medical nanobots can now target enemy cells instead of repairing them. We're also building EMPs based on Drahan generators. Intelligence Officer Paul Davis had been deployed to 3 occupied worlds to organize underground resistance cells among the conquered. For the first time ever, pacifist alien species were being taught concepts humans lived by: sabotage, asymmetric warfare, and dying for freedom. They rebels on Kepler 438b destroyed 6 Cathara depots this month, Paul reported via encrypted transmission. They're finally learning that sometimes the only way to protect your people is to hurt your oppressors. Their mindset is changing fast. The war's momentum shifted at the Battle of Nexus Station, a vast platform used by Dominion fleets to launch strikes into human territory. General Mitchell arrived with 12 human fleets, humanity's largest force ever assembled, and found 400 enemy ships standing guard. "Sir, they outnumber us 3-1, said a young tactical officer named Rachel from Europa Colony. "Good," Mitchell muttered, staring at the map. "Then they're all in one spot where we can hit them." The human offensive came from 6 vectors simultaneously, using tactics no galactic navy had ever imagined. Rather than shield their own forces, humans intentionally sacrificed ships to punch through and obliterate critical targets. Captain Martinez soon faced the Dominion's flagship, a monstrous Cathara bioship, trying to flee the chaos. Her own vessel was crippled, engines burning, weapons almost gone. The ship's fuel reserves were nearly exhausted. Any typical galactic commander would have retreated, preserving their vessel and crew, but Martinez wasn't typical. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed," he ordered over the comms. "It's been an honor serving with you." The Relentless surged forward, accelerating straight into the enemy flagship. Its reinforced prow slammed into the bridge section of the Cathara command ship. Both vessels erupted in a blinding explosion that bathed the battlefield in searing light. But with that single final act, Martinez had slain the Cathara Emperor and shattered the heart of the Dominion's leadership. Major Foster survived the destruction of Nexus Station and led a final assault force to capture the Dominion's supreme commander, General Vextol, a Draken warlord undefeated in 2 centuries of conquest. During interrogation, the truth emerged about the enemy's confusion over humanity's methods. "Your species is illogical," Vextol said through a translator. "Civilized life forms protect themselves. You sacrifice lives for concepts, honor, loyalty, purpose. How do we fight those who embrace death so willingly?" The victory at Nexus Station echoed through the galaxy like a storm. Across the Dominion's subjugated worlds, enslaved aliens looked skyward and whispered about the Death Worlders who fought back. Messages began to filter into human space, quiet pleas from species who had never known war but now wished to learn it, to defend themselves, to rise. The Draken Republic was the first to secede from the Dominion alliance. Its seasoned generals, no strangers to power shifts, understood the nature of the new enemy. Soon after, the Zir Collective broke ranks. Their hive mind concluded that continued conflict against humanity would end in absolute annihilation. Their calculations left no room for arrogance. But the true turning point of the war wasn't measured in wreckage or territory. It was measured in understanding. For the first time in millennia, peaceful civilizations recognized that survival sometimes demanded strength. On the newly freed world of Kepler 438b, High Scholar HFY founded the first galactic military academy. Vani scholars partnered with human veterans to teach those who had once been victims how to resist. "Today's lesson is defensive formations," said Colonel Beth Johnson, standing before a class filled with diverse alien students. Her voice was firm but calm. "We are not here to create killers. We are here to forge strength so that none of you will ever be taken in chains again." The training yard was alive with activity. Volani practiced blade stances beside Century twins, while Alarians struggled to coordinate firing drills. They were clumsy, unused to aggression, awkward in their movements, but they tried. And slowly, painfully, they began to grasp the mindset that humanity had carried for thousands of years. A mindset shaped by predators, storms, and blood. The age of innocence was ending, and in its place, something new was being born. Not war for conquest, not violence for domination, but war for freedom.